This video might be upsetting for some viewers because what I'm about to show you is a significant global story that is being overlooked by the mainstream media. The reason for this disregard is that the story threatens the established global order. The United States recently announced its preparation for war with China and Russia simultaneously. This move is driven by the fact that the US sees China as a comprehensive security challenge. However, the media is exaggerating the threat to create fear among the public. Even Governor Ron DeSantis is exploiting this fear to push selective narrative of the government. Defensive Secretary Lloyd Austin has unveiled the 2024 military budget, which includes a substantial 40% increase in spending aimed at countering China specifically. The Pentagon has labeled China as the most serious and comprehensive challenge to the US national security. However, some argue that the media is sensationalizing this threat by suggesting that Chinese soldiers might invade American homes, creating unnecessary fear to drum up public support for a potential war. Governor Ron DeSantis is also adding to the narrative, emphasizing the perceived threat posed by China and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. He believes that China's military and economic strength make them the #1 threat to the US national security, as the government justifies the need for increased defense spending by presenting it as part of a Pacific deterrence initiative aimed at countering China and Russia. Last week, the United States announced plans to build 4 new military bases in the Philippines, bringing the total number of US military bases worldwide to 754. The purpose of these bases, according to the US, is to deter China. However, critiques argue that the US's military buildup in the Asia-Pacific region and its policies aimed at China could lead to conflict and confrontation, as warned by Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Zhang. The announcement of these military bases is seen by some as a reflection of the US's desire for war with China and Russia. This comes at a time when Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin are making significant moves that could potentially alter the international power structure and monetary system. In a recent meeting in Moscow, Xi Jinping and Putin signed 14 documents with trade and currency being the major focus. This event is considered one of the most important stories in the world currently. However, it has received little attention from the US mainstream media, which has been preoccupied with other topics. Critiques argue that the US media is deliberately diverting attention from pressing issues such as the US banking crisis and the decline of the US dollar. They claim that these events have global significance and should receive more attention. It is suggested that the US's preparation for war with China and Russia is not solely about deterrence, but also driven by the fear of losing their dominant position in the international order and monetary system. In a significant development, China has played a surprising role in brokering a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, 2 long-standing enemies in the Sunni and Shiite Muslim divide. This is a noteworthy achievement, especially considering that it was China, not the United States, that facilitated the peace agreement. The implications of this development cannot be overstated. Adding to the significance of China's involvement, Saudi Arabia has openly discussed the possibility of settling their oil trades in the Chinese currency, the yuan, instead of the US dollar. This move has the potential to replace the dominant status of the US dollar as a global reserve currency and disrupt the long-standing petrodollar system. Currently, countries trading oil typically settle transactions in the US dollars, giving the United States considerable influence and the ability to impose sanctions. However, if the settlement shifts to the yuan, it would significantly diminish the US's economic leverage and change the dynamics of global power. The impact of this shift cannot be underestimated, as it would alter the balance of power between nations. The United States, stripped of its ability to impose economic sanctions through control over the global currency, will be left with military power as its primary means of influence. The consequences of such a change are profound and far-reaching. In addition to the Saudi-Iran peace deal and the potential shift away from the US dollar, there are other significant geopolitical developments unfolding. Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Mexico are all reportedly considering joining the BRICS alliance, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This alliance represents a growing alternative power bloc that challenges the traditional dominance of the Western powers. Interestingly, as soon as Mexico expressed its intention to join BRICS, the United States began discussing military intervention in Mexico to combat drug cartels. Critiques argue that this move by the US is not genuinely about drug cartels, but rather a response to Mexico's potential alignment with the Alternative Power Alliance. United States has made statements hinting at possible military action against Mexico if it decides to join the BRICS organization. The BRICS organization, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, represents an alternative power bloc challenging the traditional dominance of Western powers. Mexico's potential interest in joining this alliance has raised eyebrows and sparked discussions about the potential consequences for regional dynamics. In this context, some critics and analysts have interpreted certain actions and statements by the US officials as indicators of a potential military response. One example often cited is when the US started discussing the possibility of military intervention in Mexico to address the issue of drug cartels shortly after Mexico expressed its interest in joining BRICS. Critiques argue that this sudden focus on military action is not genuinely about combating drug cartels, but rather a reaction to Mexico's potential alignment with an alternative power bloc that challenges the US influence. The possibility of major oil-producing countries aligning under a single alliance has garnered attention. If this were to occur, it would bring together half of the world's population, utilizing a Chinese and Russian oil infrastructure tied to oil, gold, and no longer reliant on the US dollar. Notably, China has been purchasing and stockpiling large amounts of gold, leading to concerns about global gold supplies running low. Gold producers are rushing to meet the demand as prices reach record highs, touching $2,000 per troy ounce. In the midst of these shifts, tensions between the United States and Iran have escalated. In the past 48 hours, the US launched airstrikes against Iran, targeting them in Syria. Syria has become a proxy battleground for these conflicts. The US justification for the strikes was in response to Iran's alleged attacks on American soldiers stationed in Syria. Questions arise as to why American troops are deployed in Syria in the first place. Furthermore, there are reports circulating that raise significant questions about recent events. Important NATO operations center in Ukraine was destroyed by Russia, resulting in numerous casualties, including top-level NATO and Ukrainian officials. These reports, allegedly suppressed, bring to light crucial information that has been kept from the public. All these pieces of the puzzle, when considered together, begin to paint a picture of a shifting global landscape and potential geopolitical tensions. US wants to maintain its control over NATO and South America. US employs trade agreements, military coercion, and economic partnerships to maintain control. Through initiatives such as the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and the proposed United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, the US secures favorable trade conditions and market access in the region. These agreements often contain provisions that benefit the US corporations and industries, solidifying American economic influence and deterring nations from seeking alternative alliances or economic systems. Militarily, the US maintains a strong presence in both NATO and South America to project power and ensure its security interests. Within NATO, the US plays a central role as a leading contributor to the alliance's military capabilities. It deploys troops, maintains military bases, and conducts joint military exercises, asserting its authority and strategic influence over the organization. This dominance allows the US to shape NATO's agenda and decision-making processes, ensuring its own priorities are addressed and protected. In South America, the US has a history of military interventions and interventions that have aimed to maintain its control over the region. Through various means, including covert operations, military aid, and support for regional allies, the US has sought to prevent the rise of alternative ideologies or governments that challenge its influence. This has included efforts to suppress leftist movements, support right-wing regimes, and maintain a favorable geopolitical landscape that aligns with the US interests.